What is up, everybody? Welcome to a Pretty Perspective podcast.
A place where we bring light to hardship. Today's episode is going to be about motherhood from two non-mothers.
Yeah, right?
And at first, we wanted to talk about the stigma that women are supposed to have children and that it's okay to not want children. And so we wanted this to be just an episode for anybody who may not have the desire to have kids, to not feel alone. And then our idea for the episode kind of went in some other directions. So we also want to touch on the fact that it's okay to change your mind. So we're going to go through actually an anonymous interview that we did with a mother that we know and kind of talk about how she didn't necessarily want to have kids and now being a mother is like the best thing in her life. But I also want that segment of the podcast to just be a place for anybody who's changed their mind in general. It's okay to want kids and then something happen and then not want kids or however it goes for you. And then during the interview that we did with this mother, we also thought we wanted to kind of tie in some similar topics that we touched on in our birth control episode around our medical system being super disinfected and also fear-based narratives around mothers and birthing. So in that segment at the end, we also are going to give you guys some resources and just tips for preparation if you are entering pregnancy or motherhood. And yeah, so kind of just like an all-encompassed episode about motherhood from two non-mothers.
Right?
So, yes, I think to start off, I kind of was thinking we should talk about like where we think that stigma comes from and the stigma of, women are supposed to have children and maybe talk about some reasons why it's totally okay for somebody not to want to have kids.
I've never wanted to have children. I knew when I was like 16 years old, I'm like, that ain't for me. But you didn't like say that out loud to anybody, right? You like, you kind of like look over your shoulder like you got a secret, like, hey, I don't want to have kids. And I think it comes from a couple of different places. I think it is residual from generations that lived that way. I think as generations kind of handed that idea off to their, what do I call it? Their lineage, I guess you could say. The healthcare system stepped in and started to muddy up the water about what that means. I think just by like either it being medication or birth control or having kids or whatever. I think it's also pressed on women to have children because it's a really important part of economics and how we circulate and create money and for why, and how all of that works. But if we look at all the things that we've already talked about, like birth control, what we're about to talk about here, it's for me personally, I think that it is a form of control, and it's hard for someone like me who already has an issue with authority to be told that I have to do something. So then I almost turn around and I'm like, okay, so I won't then. Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's super interesting with you and then some other people that I know where it's like you've always just known you didn't want to have kids. And I think there's so much more to it. It's like almost a spiritual thing. Like that's not a part, like you like to mention like your contract here on earth, right? Your time here on earth. If you have never wanted kids, that could just be part of your time here is to not
Right.
want to have kids. And so to me, it's just as somebody who does want kids, I've gone back and forth. Like when I was younger, I thought I didn't want kids. I hated kids, like blah blah blah. And that was just a trauma response. But when I was little, I was a kid who like always had baby dolls and like stuffed animals and like I
Well,
was
look at how you treat your cats.
yeah, like I have like just that natural instinct to want a mother. Like and like it's cool because like a few of my friends who don't want kids, to me, they are very motherly. It's not that they don't, and like with you, like I think you would be an amazing mother. So it's not the fact that you're not motherly. It's a true lack of desire, and that's okay,
It's
right?
never really been an openly spoken choice. It's just something that you, as a woman, you do. It's almost comparable to the initiation of drinking to inebriation on your 21st birthday. It's like, make sure you do this before 40, which I also think that because of how the structure of economics and opinions and things and control, I think that I have no factual evidence about this. This is just skepticism. But if you think about how we develop mentally, physically we get there before we get there here, right? So I think being the pattern recognizer that I am, I think that we've all been told that 40 is not good because I think it's actually the perfect time. Your brain's developed,
Mm.
your body has been through some stuff. Of course, things are going to start to deteriorate, but if you really think about it, wouldn't it make sense to have a kid or to have a baby when you're right up here and you're connected to your body at the same time rather than having a baby before you've even figured out what's going on up here for you? Then you throw a baby into it and you don't even, I'm sorry, but also the thing is, I have an issue with commitment. So I had a dog. I've had several pets, and it's every single time I get a pet, there will be one day I look at it and I'm like, so you mean to tell me I got to do this for another 10 years? No. And then to touch on, the second thing that we talked about, it's okay to change our minds, right? If it were to ever happen for me, I'd probably, yeah, change my mind, especially if I've got a partner and the recipe is correct for
Yeah.
what's happening at the time. Because I've had two miscarriages and it's not a malicious thing. Was it somber after it happened? Absolutely. But also on some side of it, and I'll just say this out loud in case somebody feels like they can't, I was so thankful because my body knew that I wasn't okay up here yet. And there is stuff behind that where, and we've touched on this. You guys should check out our birth control episode because we actually did talk about this. Where if the environment inside of you, which is directly connected to your nervous system and how you think and all that, if you don't have an environment inside of you that energetically can create, that's what my body did. That's what I believe my body did. I was 17 the first time and 19 the second time. And so I really think that my body was like, no, she cannot,
Mm.
so I didn't. Um, so it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to be okay if it didn't happen for you. It's okay to think you want to have a baby and then one day decide that you don't.
Yeah.
Adoption's always a thing too. For some reason, I've always wanted to adopt over actually having a child. First and foremost, I don't know that I'll ever get over this, but I'm pretty selfish over my body right now, and I just don't want to give it up to something. And I'm 34 years old. And this is when you're supposed to. Nah, I'm getting into my prime with it. No way.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a tough conversation for sure.
Yeah. 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 And I think it's interesting too because like like a woman's body, right, is necessary to have children, right? Like you can't have a child without a woman's body
I don't think so.
to harbor it. Not yet. Who knows what's
Yeah.
coming? But that's creepy. Don't like that kind of stuff. I'm not in,
Podcast episode. Just kidding.
not into the sci-fi stuff. But like you said, it's kind of like a control thing. Like I feel like the narratives around us having to have kids, of course it is biology too, right? That's where it stems from. Like the circle of life is a woman and a man have a baby, right? Like that is the natural circle of life before science was available, before like our human design was able to evolve into different genders and different, different types of partnerships and IVF and stuff like that, right? So it is like at the base of it, it's the circle of life. But now that humans have evolved and women's bodies are needed to have children, that's why I think the societal norm has been and almost always will be that you like should have a child, right? Because if more and more women, as I think I would love to know the statistic, I don't know, but I feel like more and more women aren't wanting to have kids. And if that keeps going, what happens to humanity, right? And I have a strong belief that humanity, or the earth at least in general, will always bounce back. It will always reset as needed. But I think, you know, the economy, like you said, or the patriarchy, if you will, like feels.
Well, let's also, we can also take the direction of this, and this is directly connected to the interview that you did about the narrative and mothers and birthing and having a home birth versus a birth that's in a hospital. And you look at those narratives and you look at how women are treated when they go into the hospital. And also, I saw, not to get on this topic, but it is going to be kind of the same where I'm going with it. I saw somebody, a male, giving their opinion about the A word and whether or not we should be able to do it. And it's murder no matter what. And it's this, and this. Okay. Now, while I respect you because you're a human and you have an opinion, but if you don't have a female body, why do you get a choice in the matter of that decision ever? And so then my other question is to you, why do, and no offense to husbands, no offense to boyfriends, no offense to any of that, but it is the mother of your child carrying that baby, growing it, physically taking it on, emotionally. It's not possible for you to ever know what she feels like to be able to do that. So why do you have any input other than agreeing with what she says, unless her life's going to be in danger or whatever? I'm sure there are points in pregnancy where you got to be talked off a ledge or something. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I feel like for me in my life, and if I had a partner, my partner, I would hope that my partner is going to agree with anything it is that I have to say because they understand that it's my body and they respect me as a woman and my own unique feminine experience as a woman being pregnant, having a baby. Can't stress this part enough. You'll never know because you're not a female. That what is anybody doing, telling anybody what to do in this situation at all?
Mm, yeah.
And the interview that you did, and I'll let you take it away after that, but the interview that you did, there were many situations where she said, no, I want it this way, and then it was blatantly. So if you want to touch on that, because you did the interview, and we'll kind of dive into what her experience was, because it was just even reading about it and listening to you talk about it, it is traumatic, and it should never ever feel like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I want to say before we like dive into the birth story and just the experience as a whole with like the medical system and the way that um our medical system has very much disinfected any type of experience, but in this case, labor and delivery. Your Everybody's birth experience is going to be different and nobody's can go perfectly as planned. And so when we're talking about this, we don't want anybody to feel like their birth story
Mm.
is less than or their birth story is the wrong way or you
Or
shouldn't.
to be afraid because of what we're about to talk
Yeah.
about, because that doesn't mean yours is going to go that way. Yes.
We want to help you guys with just bits and pieces of this interview. Be prepared or just think about these kinds of things and be able to fight for your own autonomy, knowing that
Yes.
this type of stuff might happen. And so, just a little like overview of the interview we did. This mom really wanted to have a natural birth. And for anybody listening, Nebraska is the only state, which is where I live and where my friend lives. Nebraska is the only state you cannot have your midwife at your home birth. You cannot have no medical professional can attend a home birth or it is a felony. And so at the end of this episode, I'm going to let you guys in on a bill that's up for a vote. So if you live in Nebraska, you can help us try and get it passed. But so this mother,
And just one real quick thing too. This person she's talking about did not want to have children.
yes,
That was the whole to go back to circle back to not wanting kids and changing your mind. That's an important part of this as well.
yes. So, our interviewee, she did not want to have children, and she was very similar, where she knew, like, when she was even little, she was never the kind of girl that, like, really played with, like, dolls or, like, played house or anything like that. Um, so it was a very, like, innate desire to not become a mother. And when she did become pregnant and decided to move forward with her motherhood journey, she did decide that she wanted to have a natural birth. As natural as she could, but here in Nebraska, you can't do it at home. So she knew she would have to pick a hospital or a birthing center to attend when she had her birth. She had midwives and a doula to help her. And she had a whole perfect birth plan, as I'm sure most moms try to have, and things did not go her way at all. One of the main things that started this all on the wrong foot was the fact that she was over the age of 35. The hospitals did everything they possibly could to scare her into thinking that she was in danger. Her baby
It's
was,
literally called a geriatric pregnancy at
she was,
30.
she was an advanced maternal age at 35. Okay. We're not even at like halfway through life yet.
That's what I'm saying. I think that your body's actually primed here and a little bit older, and we've been duped, but continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from the beginning, this is where her story kind of was always off on a rocky start. And so for anybody who's still wanting to have children and you're above 35, as long as you're taking care of yourself, as everyone should, taking care of your nutrition and exercise and your stress management, this interviewee is proof that you can have a beautiful, healthy baby after the age of 35 and you can be okay and your baby can be okay. But our healthcare system does not want you to think that. And so this is where those fear tactics started to come in. And our interviewee, she originally was, touring hospitals to see where she wanted to go. She first met with an OB who really didn't give her any autonomy to ask questions, didn't give her any autonomy to like, turn down certain tests that she didn't feel were necessary and were possibly just invasive for no reason. And so she made the decision to switch over to the midwives here in Nebraska. And even when she switched over to the midwives do tend to go the same route as hospitals. But that's what their just normal policy is. But they are way more open to natural suggestions from the mother if they please, right? And so if you are somebody in Nebraska or another state where home births or birthing centers maybe aren't as popular as they are like in California or something, just know that you might have to do a little bit of your own research in order to make these kinds of decisions for yourself if you are wanting to try a more natural route. Um,
Well, the risks that go along with that, like as much as we want to push and be for home births and things like that that are natural, there's a lot of it, there's a lot of work and research, like Lindsay's saying, going into it. Like things could go wrong. I have a few people that I know where they had home births, and there was a point where they were like, you know what, this is just getting to the point where we don't have a choice but to. And so I think maybe if you are going down that route, it's good to have just like a backup plan, or unless that's exactly what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. And that's like one thing that our interviewee mentioned is, you can try and plan as much as you want, but things might not go your way. And being able to accept that is going to be huge during your labor. because if you can't accept what's happening, um, mm, as in like the your plan not going exactly as is, your body might, want to stop labor. If you get yourself too worked up, too stressed, that can just cause things to just go a little bit more downhill. And so I think one of the biggest things I took away from the interview is like the most important thing is, that this baby comes out healthy, right?
Hmm.
So you have to be able to stay calm and make your decisions. But this is also why it's super important to have the people around you too, helping you fight for your autonomy. And so when this interviewee, decided to go with the midwives, she had awesome midwives. Her whole experience with the midwives was really awesome. They, took her ideas with like any test she didn't necessarily want to have or like um any procedures and stuff that she didn't want to have, and they were very much on her side for her birth plan and like getting to the hospital and having a natural birth, whatever. Um, but when her birth story started to go a little bit downhill, if you will, the midwives were actually the hospital would not allow the midwife to come to her birth no longer because she didn't go to the hospital as soon as she was supposed to when she started having contractions, if this makes sense.
What does
So,
that have to do with the midwife being able to be there?
right. So this is where the conversation of the healthcare system be, being way too disinfected for our own good, picking liability over patient care is kind of the way I'm thinking about it because their policy of you need to come in X hours from your first contraction or whatever. I don't exactly know the policy, but they had that policy, and for some reason if you didn't do that, your midwife could not even be in labor anymore, and one of their OBs had to deliver your baby. So that's just the beginning of a story where the hospital, our hospital system it has its time and place. But this is just where I want people to recognize that it's so sterilized that they make decisions that just made the whole situation worse, right? Because now this woman had somebody, a complete stranger, delivering her baby
Right. Right.
and fear, just straight fear, right? This is one of the most vulnerable times. Some people explain this as like you die and then you're reborn with your baby, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Using the word disinfected different than the context of how I think about it, although I do agree with it in the context that you're saying it in.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. What do you mean by it then?
Uh, to talk about the disinfecting part too, and you can clarify what you mean by this as well. But when I think about disinfected and going to the hospital, I mean, like we're all too clean. We're all too, the lights in there and everything's clean and blah, blah, blah. I just listened to the woman I live with and her birth story like 2 nights ago. It's a mess. It's messy and it's gross and it's painful and it is exposing and it's vulnerable and it's all these things. And we try to wrap it up in this tiny, shiny box and make sure that everything's good to go and everything's great. And part of the interview that you shared with me is that there's actually benefits to having babies in specific ways that they get certain like antibodies from and whatever. So that's exactly what I mean. I think when somebody has a birth naturally versus a C-section, right? You talked about that a little bit in the interview where it's like, if we take all of this stuff away from the natural things that come from that we need when we're being born, then we're producing babies that are sick. I don't know how else to say that. It's like listening to an interview a while ago. It's really similar to how we don't eat fermented foods and stuff as often. So there's a gut bio uh, bacteria. There are several different kinds of bacteria that are extinct now because we just don't ingest it, and we need that bacteria in order to survive. So by disinfected, I'm almost just coattailing on what it is that you say further into it because we are the mess too. And it is a beautiful thing and it is a painful thing. And the other thing is if we think about it from a biological standpoint, females, and we talk about this all the time because it's so cool, we're designed to take on pain that's however many more times than a male so that we can endure what it is to have a child. So why are we taking that experience away from that experience? I'll tell you right now, part of the reason why I don't want to have a kid. But that's just my own personal preference, not because it's dangerous, not because of anything like that. I just I'm somebody who thinks about it, and if I have the choice to avoid that, for right now, I'm gonna, like. But I think that that is a rite of passage. I think it's wrong to try and make it seem just so mechanical and robotic and disinfected.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I like and the use of disinfectant, I think that just like encapsulates though our entire health system like we've
Yeah,
talked about.
yeah.
It's like we want everybody to look so perfect. We want everything to look so perfect. We want everyone to look so polished. We want everything to seem so easy peasy lemon squeezy. That's why pain,
Not real.
yeah, and that's why like pain medications are just thrown around willy-nilly at everything. And it's like if humans aren't experiencing pain, what kind of human beings are we, right? And that's like the
I
same thing as people who don't want to work out because it's hard. Like you have to do shit that hurts. You have to. Like just like we talked about in the healing episode, like it's gonna be hard, it's gonna suck, but on the other side is something beautiful. On the other side of a natural, painful birth is a beautiful, healthy baby that if you are able to have a natural birth and a vaginal birth, your baby's microbiome is going to be kick-started from that
yeah.
versus a C-section where that baby doesn't get to experience the microbiome of the vaginal canal and the cervix. Who knows what that does to your development, you know? And of course, there's a time and a place for a C-section if that's what you choose or if that's what you have to do. We don't want anyone to feel bad about it. But for those who are wanting a natural birth, that's just another reason to fight for it.
Yeah. I think also women have been suppressed to the point where this all seems, I don't mean bigger than it is, meaning it's not a big deal, but I think the suppression of women has normalized not giving us autonomy. So it's just easier to be like, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and do what we think is best anyways because time, whatever the reason may be, but also, it's a really tough spot to be in, I would imagine, to be physically delivering a baby and then have things happening to you that you didn't agree to or that were never supposed to be a part of it but could be avoided or again was something that you said no. And we think about, when we got to buy houses, we as in women, 1970s, I'm pretty sure that before that you weren't even legally allowed to like buy like property or things like that or whatever beforehand because you had to be married to do it, right? So it's like now we have women and some things in place allowing autonomy. And I mean, the fact that we have to have laws put in place to do that is absolutely insane. I'm a human being, you know, um, as all women are, but I'm saying like we I think that it's just easier to do that because it's always been done that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of touch on part of the interview too, just for people to be aware, like of things you need to be aware of if you are going to a hospital for a birth and you have a birth plan and you maybe don't want to do the drugs that a lot of women do. And again, if you want to have a birth with drugs, good for you. That's awesome and I love that for you. But this is kind of information for if you are showing up to a hospital and you are trying to have a natural birth, we want to share this part of the story. that we got from our interviewee, and I'm sure it's happened to other women as well. And again, this is not to scare anybody, but during our interviewee's delivery, when she was still laboring, her contractions had completely stopped when she got to the hospital because of the stress. And they wouldn't let her go back home because she had a pre-ruptured the amniotic fluid that comes out, she had like pre-ruptured in the sac, right? So they say that you will get an infection if you do not give birth X amount of hours after the sac ruptures.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? They will make you take antibiotics. And if anybody's listening, antibiotics are very detrimental to your health and your microbiome. And this interviewee tries to avoid them at all costs. And she knew that there's plenty of mothers out there that have home births, that have pre-ruptured sacs, that don't end up taking antibiotics and they end up okay. Okay. So she knew it would be okay because she had done her research. She had researched a lot of natural births. Okay. They wouldn't let her go home. Her contractions had completely stopped because she was so stressed. And so after a lot of like, you know, tribulation between her and the nurses, they convinced her, we'll just give you a little bit of Pitocin to get the contraction started again. And she finally just agreed, okay, like a little bit, right? One little dose, that's fine. So they gave her a little bit, and she explained that the contractions didn't even feel real. Like they felt fake. They truly felt fake. She knew this isn't what contractions should really feel like because she knew that if you were having a real contraction, your body's also going to produce certain hormones to make you feel at peace with it. But these fake contractions were causing fear, more fear, right? And so she knew she's like, these contractions aren't real, which then just elevated her stress, which then kept her from actually dilating, right? Contractions should be the baby getting in position, coming down through, your cervix dilating. That's what should be happening. But when you try and do it synthetically, it might not happen like that, especially if you're uber stressed. So just for everyone to know that. So she agreed to a little bit of Pitocin. They did that after, I either think before the Pitocin kicked in or after she had a few contractions. She went to go to the bathroom. And when she went to the bathroom, she caught out of the corner of her eye a nurse putting more Pitocin in her IV. She lost it, right? She was like, that's not what we agreed on. So this is the first case scenario where the hospital lied to her, right? So they're already choosing liability over actual patient care and what's best for the mom with telling her midwife she couldn't be there. Now they're lying to her, okay? And anybody who works in a hospital, if you're listening to this, I understand that you might just be doing your job. So again, this isn't to hate on anybody who's a nurse. This isn't to
Or a
dis
doctor.
or a doctor or like anybody who's involved in that kind of stuff because it's not your fault. It's the system at this point. And we just want to bring awareness to anybody. Um, but this nurse lied. And I think that is really scary. That's really scary to me because it just goes to show, I think that like people just, drugs are just thrown around like it's nothing. Drugs are thrown around by the healthcare system like it doesn't impact you, right? And I think that's really scary.
Well, it is because again, it's easier. It always has been easy. I mean, there's already a history of, like I said, again, I got to use that word, like suppression of what it is that a female wants to do with her own body. We have fought about it for hundreds of years. Has anybody stopped to look around and wonder why? Why are we so worried about us having control of our own body? That's a different conversation, but
and it's something that I've been hearing on TikTok a lot is how we are literally a portal.
yes.
And
How are you not? You create life.
in
If
that,
you are open enough to create a baby, that means energy comes into you and then you produce it out. That is what a port.
and that's crazy. And people are scared. I think the patriarchy is scared of that. You know what I mean? Um, and of course, like,
Yeah, because if we stop having children, like you talked about earlier, they're already talking about that. It's already being talked about how there are less and less and less babies being born. And that's actually really dangerous for the humanity.
yeah, yeah. And it's sad because I understand why some people don't want kids. Some people don't like, I understand the natural desire to not want kids, but some people don't want kids because they just don't want to bring children into a world like this.
That, to touch on what you said earlier, I don't want to have kids because it's it's 1000% because of what I went through as a kid. I would be what I know about myself right now. And if I found out that I ever made my kid feel anything but eons better than that, I mean, I don't know that I have the emotional capacity to take on hurting my child like mentally. I don't think that I would be a stable enough person to do that because I'm such an empath. It would destroy me and things for people around me already destroy me, you know. But I also think energetically that's also why I've not ever been blessed with having a kid, because I think the powers that be here, for whatever reason I got here, I just wasn't meant to, or at least not yet. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's we are a portal. It's wild. But then they'll step in and, you know, give us birth control to mess with the energy that's in that portal. So it sounds weird and magical and woo woo to say that we are a portal, but if we were to make it scientific or talk about it in a different context, it only makes sense that something so powerful, that if we did have the choice, I think a lot of women would say no. I think that if we weren't, not necessarily brainwashed, but if it wasn't just the next box to check for a female to have a kid, I don't think it would happen as often anymore, especially right now. Everything's a mess.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, though. I think if life was simpler, more people would be okay with having kids because there would be less trauma. There would be less,
There'd be more time to have one.
there'd be more time to have one. And if life was still simple, there wouldn't be such an uproar about everything going on, right? And so it's like it's such a double-edged sword. And I also sometimes think, I'm going to be honest, sometimes I don't think it's really that deep. And sometimes I really think that laws were passed to try to protect people. And it's just gone too
Absolutely.
far.
Yep.
And sometimes that just is what it is. And that's kind of the truth that I just try to hold on
I
to. And
think you're right. I think that's 80% of it for
yeah.
sure.
And it's the lack of letting somebody do something else, right? That's where I'm like, something's weird, right? There can be laws put in place, but my thing is like, okay, a hospital needs to put a law in place to protect mothers and protect babies, right? And like you said, and like our interviewer said, the hospital would rather explain a mother being upset than a mother dead. I get that,
Mhm.
right? I get that. I get that's why the policy should be in place. But where I get confused is if it's up to that mother, why isn't there a way to go around it? Right? Like, I get that that should be the policy in place and that the hospital needs that. But if it's truly just to keep people safe, why isn't there a way around it? Right? Like, that's where I think it's gone too far.
Because we don't teach people how to grieve.
Mm,
So let's say, so what she, because you kind of jumped right into it, but so what we're saying is that if it's your choice to have a natural birth and something goes wrong, goes sideways, and you pass away because you're giving birth to this baby, which there are complications all the time, um, then we're saying that that should be your choice if that's your choice. But everybody, a hospital would rather explain an upset mother than one who has passed away through her own choice of it, because we don't know how to deal with or manage our emotions for anything. So when something comes up that we need to grieve, we're all so uncomfortable with even talking about death. We're not gonna we're not gonna give any kind of opportunity to even introduce it because we don't know how to hold it.
yeah. And
And that's a different conversation as well, but
it makes sense. It's just it's so complicated. We've humans have just made life so
I
complicated.
know. You know what's not complicated though is the joy that she felt after she was able to bring this baby home. So, you know,
Yes, after a couple more lies that the hospital told. So just
uh,
so everybody knows that you need if you can have a partner. aware of what's going on when you have just given birth and you're just wanting to hold your baby, having a partner, having your mother, having a friend or somebody be around. I think something really important I want to mention is just because I think people should know this is that the nurses tried to lie about her baby's temperature to send
Mm.
the baby to the NICU. Why? Maybe because they were genuinely worried about the baby. Okay, maybe. Or maybe because the NICU racks up a huge bill for parents.
That's a
First,
bummer.
that's my first intuition and like why would
Sure.
they lie, right? Maybe they were genuinely concerned about the baby, but if it didn't have a temperature, I don't know why you would be. And luckily her partner was able to catch the lie so that they could have their baby stay with them, so she could hold him on their chest. So just another little blip that I hope everybody can look out for.
To have extra eyes with you, yeah, not to like keep bringing up horror stories, but I, as a personal trainer, trained quite three different what's the word, pediatric surgeons, and with two of them, they were female, talked about how it's actually very common for a hospital to push a C-section
Yeah.
because a doctor doesn't want to sit through the labor of it, or they want to get done with their shift,
And it's more expensive.
or yep,
They get
yep,
paid more.
yep. And so a lot of times that's a really, as much as we think birth is this um intrusive like thing, so is slicing a mother's tummy open and pulling this baby out
Because
when
that's not,
it's when it maybe it doesn't even need to be here yet. That's a different conversation too, but it is talked about how doctors will push a C-section so that they can get the procedure done faster.
and see, this is another where I'm taking the word disinfected. That's so disinfected.
Yep.
That's so disinfected. They would rather take it out than let that not like, ugh.
They're robbing you of your experience
Yeah.
of having a baby.
And I just want people to know that that happens. I don't think people know. I don't think people know. I have a statistic here that our interviewee actually sent me that tells the percentage of C-sections here versus globally. Uh,
Oh, in the US, you mean?
mhm. So the US, the C-section rate is 32% and the global average is 21. To me, that's a big difference. Vaginal birth rate in the US is about 68 to 70%, and globally it's 80%. So
Whoa.
we are oh globally for epidurals are very, very variable. Like very varies a lot is what I'm trying to say. And
Oh, like
induction,
whether or not people get an epidural or not.
yeah. And the induction rate in the US is 30 to 36%. 30 to 36% of births are jump started, basically, if you don't know what an induction is. Um, and it says globally, there's not even an answer. It says NA.
Wow.
Um, so that
Yeah, I
just,
think it's a good idea to like have it in your plan, have a trusted whatever, let you have your space with it. And you know, with the way that things are nowadays too, I would almost even have like my own contract written out. Like this person is allowed to speak for me while I am recovering and doing the things because they are going to make sure that what it is that I want is done exactly the way that it just like a living will,
yeah.
right? Just like something that somebody needs to do when a lot of family members get duped because they don't have something written out, and then a disgruntled family member ends up whatever the case may be. But if you have something in line and things are this crazy, we actually don't need to be afraid of it, but we can walk in with our armor and our autonomy and make sure that our autonomy is sealed with something. And if a hospital is not going to agree with you on something you bring in like that, then I don't know, I don't want to be at that hospital.
I know. And yeah, it's tricky, but I agree with that.
And what about people who don't have this education, right? What about people who live in impoverished communities? What about people who don't have access to birth control so they can't stop having children? You know, all these people, and those women have less of a say than women who do have the privilege of living in a safe community and clean, whatever. It there are so many different things that go on here, but I think if you just pay attention to your own making sure that you are showing up for yourself with the people that you trust, because then there doesn't need to be a fight, and there doesn't need to be anything. And I think too, once you get into it, because from what it sounds like to me, again, I don't have kids, so it's like, what am I talking about? But listening to the interview and hearing this, having these people around you who are also going to step in and say, no, this is absolutely not what she wanted. I don't care that you're a doctor. And I think sometimes we have to be radical enough to be able to stand up and say, I understand that what your expertise calls for is necessary for the situation, but I am also my own human. And that word, I love to use that word because the autonomy is everything. And maybe I'm going to feel a little bit safer if you allow me my autonomy the moment I walk through the door. Like me, I know that for a fact that if I'm going to have a home birth and something happens where I have to go to the hospital, I'm probably going to be scared enough in that moment to be like, okay, I believe you. But because you let me enter it the way that I wanted to enter it first, that's going to help me a lot more trust what's going on versus when you're just forcing me to do something and everything's happening very quickly and I don't get a say in anything. I mean, I think autonomy here is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, I just hope that the experience that our interviewee had, I just hope the nurses that were there took something from it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Because they were just so rude to her, even claiming that she didn't even care about her baby because of the things that she wanted, right? And that's where,
Those people should be fired.
that's what I'm saying. What happened to bedside manner?
You don't, it doesn't matter. She could be saying the worst kind of, she could be saying she doesn't care about her baby, but she's got some live human coming out of a very small hole. I'm sorry. But you're gonna say stuff. One of the ladies I talked to a long time ago, she was like, in the middle of my birth, I yelled out, can I change my mind?
Yeah, we talked about you're allowed to change your mind, but I know it's a little too late at
A
that.
little late for that, but I think, yeah, it's important that we all like come together. And also, you guys, I'll be a little transparent in the fact that this is kind of an uncomfortable conversation for me to talk about, probably out of any of the conversations that we've had on this podcast. First and foremost, because I'm not a mom. But second of all, I think we need to all be talking about this collectively because we just don't know. And I don't, it's such a subjective thing, but if we all collectively share our stories together, we can plug things in. And in my head, I just fantasized about like, what if we, this will never, I mean, I don't even know, but like, what if how amazing would it be if we lived in a community? Like, let's say you're in Nebraska, I'm in Arizona, and, there's like mom groups and stuff, but like, moms who've already had babies that help birth babies
Right.
instead of maybe one of those nurses doesn't have kids.
Yeah.
So what are you doing putting any kind of opinion on somebody when you've never experienced it before? It's like, would I ever get a tattoo from somebody who doesn't have any? No. That's a
Yeah.
terrible example, but you know what I'm saying. If you've
Yeah.
never been through it, how do you know?
And I think that goes into play too with like the medical system as well as like like in the olden days back when we were still tribes and stuff, that's how it went, right? We didn't go to hospitals. You did. You had your mother or your aunt or your, help you deliver your baby.
And there was a natural selection of survival. And for some reason, we don't talk about that either. And what does that mean when I say that? Lindsey just said in tribes and stuff like that. We've been having babies forever, right? Humanity exists. It's existed for however long it's existed for now. And before hospitals and before all these things, people had births at home all the time. Yeah, women probably didn't recover from them as well because it's not as clean, it's not as disinfected, but in those situations, people passed away, people die. That's just how it is. And we shouldn't feel bad for talking about it. We shouldn't feel bad for bringing it up. We shouldn't we shouldn't what's the word I'm looking for? We shouldn't discriminate against somebody because they're okay with that being an outcome of them birthing a baby naturally at home with their loved ones in that space.
I think a really good segue into post baby of our interviewee is that. And she shared that we had asked her about her dreams after pregnancy, during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and all that. And she shared a postpartum dream, and she's very connected with her spirituality, her own kind. And after she had her baby, a couple weeks postpartum at home, she had a dream where her baby was walking and her mother was there and her mother, let the baby fall while they were playing.
Mm-hmm.
And our interviewee, yelled at her mom, like, you can't do that, like, you have to watch her, blah, blah, blah. And then her mom started to have a heart attack and she started to die. And the interviewee said that in her dream, she just remembers looking at her mom and her mom was dying, but her mom was smiling and she was okay with it. And I just think that's just so, just with what you're saying. And, this person gave birth, she gave new life, and then just a couple weeks later had this basically like the spiritual awakening of death being okay. And it helped her with her own motherhood ideologies of, you know what? All I have to do is lead this child to know a life and be so connected with themselves and with their spirituality that, and to teach them that everything's going to be okay, even when you're looking at death in the face, because you know where you're going to go after, you're going to be okay, and you're doing your best. And that dream she had just a couple weeks after giving birth, like, basically has set the tone for the rest of her motherhood journey of that's the most important thing, is connecting her child with their own spirituality to be okay with death.
Yeah, because we
And
don't ever talk about it, you
we
know.
don't
I
talk
mean,
about it.
it's a really I won't go down into a rabbit hole too much, but it's there's literally a mechanism within how we think that stops us from thinking about it all the time. And I looked up one time, like, why don't we get to know? Because if we did, we'd spend our whole lives trying to avoid it
Yeah.
because we're not supposed to know. Because this is supposed to be fun because we're only here for X amount of time anyway. And quite honestly, in the spiritual aspect of things, for me, death is going to be one of the biggest breaths I ever get to take because I get to go home. I don't want to do this again. I don't, there's a lot to being a human and especially being a female human and to have given birth and not given birth and all these different things. And if we can't even allow somebody the space to make the choice that maybe something's going to happen, we don't even know. Maybe what happens when somebody goes to the hospital and it's from a birth at home to the hospital and somebody dies because they went to the hospital.
You just never know. I think that's too, if we knew when we were going to die and we were trying to avoid it, we would probably end up putting ourselves in danger, right?
Yep.
Because you're trying so hard to avoid it. And I think that's what people are doing. I think that explains our medical system, is we are trying so hard to avoid death that we're making ourselves die just even longer.
Yep.
Sean Stevenson, one of my favorite podcasters, he says, yeah, we are alive longer, but we aren't living longer. We're
Right.
dying longer.
Yep.
Our death process is longer. And yeah, I think that just explains our healthcare system right there. We're so afraid of death that we're just killing people slowly instead.
Right. The post that you put on your story the other day about the
Mm.
dad. getting off of all his medication to be with his wife who had just passed. First of all, let's talk about that for a second, right? Somebody who is like, my best friend isn't here anymore, and I'm almost on my way anyway, so I'm coming, you
Yeah.
know? Why shouldn't somebody be allowed to do that? And then to turn around, not to steal your story or whatever, but I just really love that. Like, this person got off all their medication and got better. Here you are trying to walk off into the universe. And it was like, nope, actually, you're going to stay longer because you didn't need all this shit in your body anyway. Just today, I was talking to a client. She said something that her friend's kid got tonsils taken out or something. And she was like, the doctor won't give her any pain meds, blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I looked at her. This is how bold I'm getting with people. I looked at her and I go, what do you mean? She goes, what do you mean? What do I mean? I go, why don't you want your kid to feel pain? And she goes, well, if it's unnecessary, blah, blah, blah. And I go, man, look at us doing it now. Now it's a slow drip into feeling any pain at all. Not that I'm saying a little kid should suffer. That wasn't the point of what I was saying, but it was just like, why are it's because we're in a comfort crisis because nobody is in any kind of hardship anymore. Well, not the correct kind anyway, you know. But most of us, we live a pretty comfortable life, and I think that the more privileged have we're being conditioned to mask it and to band-aid it and to numb it. If we all take a bunch of medication to numb pain, what happens when we don't have that medication? I'll tell you what happens. We can't handle pain, and then we end up killing ourselves or doing something to be able to handle it. Now we have a even more sick environment that we're creating through babies who don't get the bacteria from their mothers, from people not being able to manage emotions like grief that come up that we already can't handle outside of a death of a mother to begin with. And, you know, I'm sure there are plenty of people who will sit here and be like, trying to defend it. And it's like, none of us are going to win that race. None of us are going to win that race. So why not talk about it so we can all actually come together when it happens for somebody and have it be a coming together in a union and a literal celebration of life of that person. How much life did that person live, you know? With everything I've had going on in my life lately, I think back to my 20s and just the other day I thought it was wild. But I was genuinely just living. And now I have to try and make time for that in my day as if it's part of my routine. What the actual F?
I know.
That's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for us to think that we have to somehow figure out where to put joy in our lives. I mean, I just,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't even really have any words for that. I mean, it's going to be a different world. It already is, but
Yeah.
you know,
That that joy piece that you mentioned links us back to the interview too. I think we all feel that way. As we grow older, we see less joy, right? And we had the blessing to have Jody on the podcast to talk about how we can choose joy. And, you know, that's kind of like a bittersweet thing that we have to choose joy, right? Like we have to schedule joyful things into our life. And, you know, we have to choose to, you know, like I try and be really like mindful and joyful, like washing the dishes or cleaning my house because I'm like, what else am I
you
gonna
get to
do?
do those things.
Yeah, yeah. But children have such a pure joy to them because
Mm.
they don't have responsibility. And our interviewee said when I asked her what her favorite part of motherhood was, she said the joy of of seeing life through her child's eyes and learning again how to be joyful at every little thing. And she kept saying, when the garbage truck drives by, that's like a whole joyous occasion, a little garbage truck, which actually reminds me yesterday, me and my partner went out onto the porch to like get some sun and like breathe a little bit right when we woke up. There's a garbage truck clanking glass and stuff right in front of the house. And I look at him, I'm like, nothing better than a garbage truck. And I was like all like groggy and, stressed out because like that's how I wake up. I'm like, cortisol spike. I'm
The
like,
court, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's why I came out here is to like regulate and there's a garbage truck. You know what I mean? But a kid is just like,
Look
you
at that big thing doing a big thing, you know. Well, I
and
think you think about like our whole lives because we can't live it backwards. You can't go backwards to yesterday. So I think that the joy for a little kid is so much bigger because everything is so new because they haven't had repetition of it.
yeah,
And so eventually you have to teach people how to choose joy because we've created the way that we live to worry more about all these shiny things in our lives and food to survive and all these stupid ass responsibilities we have that don't really fucking matter at the end of the day. And so we take time away from repeating what we know joy to be putting our energy into something that is actually the opposite of that. And so then we have to learn how to choose joy, which I think is just kind of an oxymoron in itself. If it's natural and innate in us, then why am I choosing it? It's just how it is. But we end up being conditioned to have to repeat other things more than that. And we do have a choice in that, I think.
yeah, I agree. And yeah, so I think to toggle on or to stack on top of the episode with Jody, our healing episode, the motherhood episode is, I mean, joy is all around us, and we all should, and our inner child episode, we all should try to connect with our inner child a little bit more and
But your
just
inner child's the one driving the car.
and just to see every day as something new though. We haven't. It might seem repetitive, but we haven't lived the day yet. We don't know. We don't know. We could go to work the same job that we always go to, and something crazy could happen. Something amazing could happen. Freaking, I don't know, freaking celebrity could walk in your door and you could be like, "Holy cow, that's really cool." Or I don't know, somebody could bring you a bouquet of flowers for free. You literally never know, but if your eyes are open to it, like a kid's eyes are open to it, our interviewee said that they go outside, never, ever, ever are they not picking the flower, right? Because it's like, oh my God, wow, right? Like, so it goes to like the old saying, stop and smell the roses. It's like there is a pattern to our everyday, but you never know what's going to happen. And that's, you could choose to think that's scary, or you could choose to think that's joyful.
I think about my little kid inside having a kid. Bet that's like my inner child will be the only thing that's out. And I think kids maybe are around to remind us that adults aren't real. We just, for some reason, this energy we were given was put into this vessel that ages over time. And we just, because of how it's very tricky because we look like we get older. We look and it's a very slow process. And it's like one day you wake up and you're like, why don't I color anymore? Why don't I giggle anymore? Why don't I lay on the floor on my stomach and move my feet back and forth? Why don't I make fart noises with my mouth anymore? Because somewhere along the line, somebody told me, you're an adult and you don't need to be doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I call bullshit on all of that. And I think that if I were to have a child, it would be to deepen the relationship I have with my own inner child. And I just haven't gotten to know her well enough yet to be able to decide that I want to do that. I've barely just integrated her for crimini's sake. So it's, yeah, even just thinking about parents who just don't seem that excited about the kids that they have, right? Like we're all just robots. So you see people out with their kids. And of course, we don't know what's going on in everybody's lives. but it's not often that I see people behaving sprightly with their kids, especially out in public. Oh my God.
Yeah, I I agree. And that's something that growing up, I think when I was in that space where I didn't want kids, that's how I saw parents a lot of the time is just so
Yeah.
stressed. And it, like you said, you never know what's going to happen. Like, you never know what people are going through. They could be really struggling financially. They could have somebody in their family that's sick, but it's like those things will still be true whether you're joyful or you're not, right?
Mhm.
And it's your children only grow up once. We all only get to grow up once. We all only get to live this life once. So I don't know, when I was younger and I would just see how stressed parents were and like they didn't play with their kids and my parents didn't play with me that much. Like they were trying to support us doing what they thought was right, right? They were working hard doing what they thought was right, which is awesome. That's great. I don't have any hard feelings about it, but
Play wasn't prioritized.
play was not prioritized. And that's something our interviewee said that she wants every mother, parent, everybody to know that it's is if you're showing up, truly trying your best, as long as you love your kid and you're trying your best, you're trying your best to do what's right for your kid. That's what matters. And you can't compare yourself to another mother. You can't compare your kid to another kid. You can't compare your family or your belongings to another family because it's all different. And we live in a society that's so cookie cutter, especially if you are, middle class, upper middle class, whatever. You live in these cookie cutter neighborhoods and everybody like has the same stuff and
Gets judged for not having the same stuff.
yeah, and the moms are getting together and they're talking about the other moms. It's like gossip is a sin for a reason, and that doesn't do you any good. You know what I mean? It's one thing to talk with your friends to get things off your chest or to collaborate or to feel safe and to feel seen and to know what's going on. And there's a difference between judging others because they aren't like you, right? And so don't worry about what other people think of you, but also you have to give that same respect to other people and not judge them, you know?
Yeah, and I think with what women are up against as far as what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing, it's also, how do I say this? It's really disappointing to hear another female judging another female because she's making a different decision, especially around birthing or not, or having a kid or not, because the opposing side is tied to religion or specific belief or something of that nature. And that's really dangerous. And again, I don't even listen to men when they say anything about any of that because I just don't. But when all of us are supposed to be collaborating and holding space and saying, "Wow, I'm really sorry that happened to you," um, instead of, "Well, you should have done this," or "You're not even going to listen to me because you don't support the decision it was that I made in the first place." And I think that there's a big conversation to be had too for supporting people and what their own individual decisions are, so long as they're not causing harm to themselves or other people on purpose or, you know, removing autonomy through their own autonomy somehow. I don't even know what that would look like, but I really, even if you disagree with somebody, you guys, I am going to challenge you. See what happens if you just sit and listen. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say a word. You could literally at the end of it be like, thanks for sharing that with me. But you listening is going to help all of us be able to talk about this stuff and figure out things in a safer space than it is to be screaming at each other. Because if that worked, that would have worked already.
Yeah. Yeah. Women have to stick together, and I genuinely think just humanity needs to
Yes.
stick together. For any listeners in Nebraska, this next bit is for you. Nebraska is unique in prohibiting certified nurse midwives, also known as CNMs, from attending home births. It's considered a felony if they do. If the bill LB 676 passes, Nebraska would 1. Permit CNMs to attend home births legally. 2. This would align with all other states where CNMs are already having this authority. And 3. This would eliminate the risk of felony charges for qualified nurse midwives attending home births. Together, LB 676 and LB 374 would significantly modernize and regulate midwife-led birth options in the state, offering more choices and safer options for families. So we ask that if you are in the state of Nebraska, and this is something that you believe in as well, let's align Nebraska with the rest of the United States and allow families the option to do this for themselves if they please. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening, and to find more from us, you can find us on Instagram at prettyperspective_podcast and also on YouTube.
Before we get ready to sign off here, remember that you are the light and you bring the glow, and we are a Pretty Perspective where we bring the light to hard shit.